force on this planet like no other. It controls a land of barely imaginable extremes. A ruler so merciless that nothing escapes its reach. This is the end of the earth. To survive here, everything must first triumph against the uncompromising force of the most powerful wind in the world. The wind that is called the Katabatic. The ice continent of Antarctica is the very limit of life's reach on Earth. Such are the extremes of this environment, life can gain no more than the barest foothold. Penguins only visit to breed. There is only one animal that manages to make a year-round home here, and even the Weddell seal spends most of its time in the sea. This female has hauled herself out onto the ice to give birth. To be born here is one of life's ultimate challenges. The difference between the temperature inside this mother's body and the world outside is almost 140 degrees. For the newborn pup, hitting the sea ice can only be a brutal shock. And then there's the wind, sweeping in as if to deal the infant a death blow in its first moments of life. It's such a punishing regime, all other creatures can be but temporary visitors. Across the rest of the continent, nothing else can overcome the Katabatic. Such is the wind's power, its influence is felt all around the world. To reveal the secret of that power, we must go to the wind's source and Antarctica's birthplace. A giant ski plane brings people and supplies to the South Pole outpost of the U.S. National Science Foundation, the most isolated research station in the world. It may as well be to another planet. The conditions challenge newcomers at every step, as they challenged Scott and Shackleton's pioneering expeditions more than 80 years ago. Midsummer temperatures of -40 degrees are the norm, cold enough to snap freeze water and make every breath sting the lungs. If not for this frontier colony, there would be nothing here, no shelter and no life of any form. Yet it is from here that all life on this continent is governed. The southernmost point of the Earth lies at the summit of a dome of ice larger than Europe and 2 miles high. The Earth's rotation draws warm air from the tropics south and down over the pole. The now cold air flows on down the great dome of ice in a series of surges that gather speed in an endless fall towards the coast. It's a pulsing river of air that carries the name Katabatic, meaning just downward wind. but its name belies a darker character. Here, at its birthplace, the Katabatic is a mere infant, a light breeze that toys with the landscape. The air is too dry for real snow. There are just tiny amounts of water vapor which form minuscule ice crystals that drift down and scatter in a constant sparkling haze known as diamond dust. This dusting is enough to bring an extra 12 inches of ice to the South Pole Dome every year. And every year, the ever-growing weight moves the ice sheet and everything on it 30 feet further down the dome's gentle slope. Its passage is evident only from the line of replacement markers at the exact South Pole. So the whole secret of the Antarctic lies in the gentle current of air, dropping a few inches of ice crystals every year since time immemorial. The airflow is so significant that data is now constantly gathered on its temperature, strength, and chemical composition. These measurements can help predict weather patterns all the way to the tropics.
Elevation of 215. Okay, the balloon is at 210. I have an elevation angle.
Science is now discovering that the Katabatic is one of the great forces of the planet. And events here determine what happens around the entire world. For the moment, it seems hard to imagine, but wisps of cloud forewarn of a change in mood. 1,000 miles away above the ocean, a storm has created a zone of low pressure. The air flowing off the ice will be drawn to it, as into a vacuum. So a new pulse of icy breath begins to move out from the continent's heart, beginning a 1,000-mile journey to the ocean in which it will grow tenfold in force and shape everything in its path. The ice, the land, and the very nature of life. Along the way, it scatters clues to our own uncertain future. This vast plateau, 2 miles above sea level, holds 95% of the world's fresh water. And so its fate and the wind that controls it has become a major focus for scientists probing the disturbing threat of global climate change. Hundreds of miles across the plateau at Saiple Dome, NASA scientist Chris Schulman has cut a path back into time. The walls of his shallow cave reveal the patterns of snowdrifts the passing wind leaves in its wake. Each layer represents a different pulse of the Katabatic. So the ice wall can be read like an X-ray of the weather of the last 50 years. We know what the weather has been like, and by matching it to the patterns it has left in the ice, Chris has deciphered a hidden code. Tracing the same code deeper in the ice can now reveal a picture of the Earth's climate long, long ago and offer a glimpse into the future. If rapidly changing weather patterns such as we are seeing now are part of a normal cycle, it will be recorded in the ice. Where the ice wall was an X-ray of our recent past, this drilling rig is extracting a biopsy of ancient history. The core brings up ice from a depth of 2,000 feet and 6,000 years into the past. And thanks to the newly cracked code, American geologist Kendrick Taylor and his team can read the weather for each of those years. Bubbles trapped in the ice carry telltale traces of atmospheric chemicals, dust and gases linked to the climate at the time. Together, the data shows that through the past 6,000 years, the world's climate has been remarkably stable. But this century, carbon dioxide levels have leapt enormously. And in the past, such rises have always been linked with rising global temperatures. To tell how significant these changes are, we need to understand the ice more. 500 miles from the pole, the Transantarctic Mountains mark the western edge of the polar plateau. They block the path of the river of ice flowing out towards the coast. And like any river, the flow wells up against the obstruction. Over millennia, rocks carried in the ice from far out on the plateau gather here. The ice on the plateau is 2 miles thick. It's just too deep for rocks to emerge from the bedrock beneath. These pebbles and fragments could only have got into the ice sheet from above, from outer space. Almost 16,000 meteorites have now been found here on the edge of the polar plateau, and changes caused by entering our atmosphere identify when they arrived. The oldest has been traced to 900,000 years ago, which tells us this ice has also been here at least that long. But the stalking Katabatic is about to show its darker side. Down the sloping ice dome, the wind has been gathering speed. It has turned from playful breeze to brutal gale. This is the stinging assault that rebuffed Scott and Shackleton and so many other explorers, ensuring this would be the last frontier on Earth to be explored. Even modern explorers must grasp opportunities between vicious onslaughts. The wind has become like the furious breath of some huge frozen beast, each raking gasp lasting for hours or days on end. Today we may be better equipped than our predecessors, but it makes little difference. The the blizzard rages no more than a few hundred feet above the ground, almost as if the Katabatic is sweeping the continent clear of life. In its wake, it leaves a landscape carved into ornately sculpted ridges, monuments to its power. For 800 barren miles the wind is unchallenged. Then, 200 miles from the coast, mountain tips thrusting through the ice sheet offer life a first foothold. Protected by their rocky shelter, snow petrels gather to breed. Through the long dark winter these birds have been feeding at sea among the pack ice. Now, in the early days of the brief Antarctic summer, they come in their hundreds. They'll settle as high as 7,000 feet up the mountains, anywhere that offers refuge from the biting wind. The snow petrels will remain here for about a month and a half. Having hatched a single chick, the adults will take it in turns to commute to the sea every few days to find food, a round trip of some 500 miles. Just why these seabirds should choose to fight so far upwind isn't clear. Perhaps they're simply drawn to the rocky shelter. Possibly the isolation from the coastal margin provides greater protection from predators. Or do they have some ancient memory passed down through the generations of a time when this land was less forbidding? The nearby Allen Hills offer a glimpse of just what that memory might be. The ice cap's partial retreat has revealed a story of frozen ages repeatedly coming and going. Rocks once carried by glaciers have been left behind where each river of ice reached its limit. These crude milestones testify that there have been major fluctuations in the world's climate prior to 10,000 years ago. Where glaciers have peeled back underlying rock, ripples frozen in sandstone testify that once water lapped a sandy shore. And swift-running rivers once cut deeply into the rock. The cuts have exposed remnants of fossilized wood. It is evidence of giant trees once towering over a broad river valley. Nearby, cliffs have been eroded by rivers and glaciers to expose seams of coal. 250 million years ago, this was a lush land covered by vast swamp forest. Is the transformation to a frozen wilderness permanent? Or is this age of the Katabatic another passing phase? As the ice reaches the edge of the central dome, it plunges over. A chaos of crevasses and caverns now offers a dramatic glimpse into Antarctica's frozen history for those daring enough to venture inside. But while even these ice falls appear fixed and motionless, the pressures that have broken them open are always at work, and they may collapse and close again at any time. After clearing the mountain passes, the ice flow picks up speed as it tumbles almost 4,000 feet in less than a mile. The chilled air of the katabatic wind is also driven by gravity. It too gathers momentum as it follows the ice down through the valleys. Then, suddenly, some of the ice flows stop. Even though it is still 100 miles from the sea, the Wright Glacier ends abruptly in a strangely dry valley. There is a series of similar valleys nearby. In each, a glacier reaches the head of the valley and goes no further. Are these remnant glaciers slowly receding as the polar ice dwindles? Or are they newcomers, about to claim the lowlands? Recent monitoring indicates they are, indeed, in recession. But the reason is complex. By tunneling through the glacier ice with chainsaws, New Zealander Sean Fitzsimons has carved a path directly to where the ice and rock meet, to look at movements deep inside. Here, the ice is little affected by short-term fluctuations in climate. It is extremely old and moves extremely slowly. The movements are so tiny they can only be detected by strain gauges attached where the ice and rock meet. While the gauges confirm that the flow down from the plateau does respond to climate changes, it takes hundreds of years for the glacier's response to show. Nothing happening here reflects climate changes within this century. Rather, it appears the gradual flow of ice off the plateau is being counteracted by a matching force. And paradoxically, the katabatic wind that brought the ice is now part of a play of forces driving it back. As the wind drops through the valleys, it accelerates. The lower and faster it gets, the warmer it becomes. And it is warmed further still as it sweeps over the valley's dark, heat-absorbing rocks. warmed enough to evaporate, or more accurately ablate, the ice sheet as fast as it intrudes, so that the Katabatic now keeps the rocks free of ice and the valleys dry. Temperature monitoring shows over recent decades, summers here in the dry valleys have been getting warmer. At times, the air temperature now rises above freezing, rises enough to melt ice, making these dry valleys the only place in Antarctica it's now possible to find fresh running rivers. Once a year, for just a few short weeks, the frozen river Onyx thaws and flows into the valley. Eventually it joins Lake Vanda, a pool 220 feet deep and liquid year-round, the final remnant of an ancient fjord once filled with seawater. Now it seems to be filling again, this time with melted ice. Scientists are still exploring the significance of the rises in temperature and water levels. They have yet to establish whether the trend is another sign of global warming driven by human change or just a part of a natural cycle. But a team led by New Zealander Ian Hawes is investigating something perhaps even more intriguing.
Yep, she's in now.
Beneath Lake Vanda's icy lid, protected from the wind and with no currents, the water is uniquely undisturbed and clear. It is kept liquid and is even heated by the sunlight filtering through the ice. And here we find Antarctica's first permanent life. Very primitive life, but life nonetheless. The dense mats of blue-green algae have almost certainly grown from spores once carried here by the wind. In the undisturbed water, their colonies rise in soft pinnacles like primitive corals, reaching towards the ice-filtered sunlight. This sheltered aquatic sanctuary is an isolated outpost in life's reach. Outside, it's an elemental war zone strewn with casualties of the Katabatic. Mummified remains are testament that life can't cope in such a barren place. Most likely these penguins and seals simply blundered into this valley after becoming lost. Preserved in the dry, lifeless air, some of these have lain here for 3,000 years. In time, the relentless wind will remove all trace, even of these. For most of the year, nothing, it seems, can stand up to the Katabatic. Not ice, not life, not even rock. Whether by constant blasting of grit-laden air, the erosion of repeated freeze and thaw, or the milling action of pebbles blowing in a hollow, ultimately everything is shaped by this wind. As the gusts of Katabatic pour off the edge of the polar plateau, they can reach speeds approaching 200 miles per hour. It's only 50 miles from the coast the wind faces challenge to its dominance. At times, breezes from the sea build sufficient force to rise against the Antarctic's overlord. And when the two winds collide, the valleys become an aerial battleground. For the first time in 800 miles, the Katabatic is forced to yield. The moist coastal airflow has won out, bringing an uncharacteristic covering of snow to the valleys. But this was merely a skirmish. Within days, the Katabatic will be back with renewed vigor to sweep aside the snow and reclaim the valleys. Across the rest of Antarctica, its drive continues unabated, leading the glaciers on a relentless march to the sea. Mountains that stand in the way, the wind and the ice simply wear down. More than ever now, the land is carved and sculpted to their design. Even in the calm between the wind's pulses, the ice it drives keeps moving, invisibly, day in, day out. As ice pours through every opening in the coastal fringe of mountains, the unbroken expanse of the polar plateau divides into hundreds of separate glaciers. They range in size from relative miniatures, only 5 miles or so wide, to 30-mile-wide giants, such as the Beardmore Glacier. In 1910, Captain Scott chose the Beardmore as the most direct route in his ill-fated race to the pole against Norwegian Raoul Amundsen. If only he had seen his route from the air. After struggling across such terrain, uphill and into the wind, Scott and his team lost the race and then fell prey to the Katabatic on their final trek back. They lie entombed even now somewhere in the 500-mile vastness of the Ross Ice Shelf. The flowing ice is a mere 150 feet thick here, deep enough to dredge the sea floor as the glacier moves out, but shallow enough now for the Katabatic's continued ablation of the ice to bring sediment to the top, creating the conditions for a surprising twist in the wind's tussle with life. The sediment gathers in drift lines on the ice surface, in places actually thick enough to insulate the ice against the wind. Its pristine whiteness sullied, the darkened ice begins to absorb heat, and for 1 or 2 months at the height of summer, it melts in places to form muddy surface pools. Amongst these pools, researchers have discovered another hidden sanctuary. Throughout the long winter, they're frozen into solid blocks, but as the summer sun melts them, they burst into life. These are microscopic creatures called rotifers. Somehow they manage to tolerate being frozen solid almost the entire year, then thaw and come back to life for just a few fleeting weeks of summer. Nearby there are more surprises. Clive Howard Williams has been monitoring pools so salty they resist winter freezing. Temperatures in these pools fluctuate from a balmy midsummer 41 degrees to minus 30 degrees in winter, and yet here too we find life. Blue-green algae again, as in Lake Vanda, although in this turbulent environment it isn't able to grow in pinnacles. It is one of the oldest and simplest life forms on the planet. Here, in these improbable circumstances, it thrives. It may be simply because no more developed organisms can tolerate the extremes of this constantly changing environment, repeatedly frozen, then thawed, and even dried. Now the primitive algae is picked up by the wind, delivering spores and dried fragments of the primal life forms to other pools. For the first time in the Katabatic's journey, here on the edge of the continent, it turns from shutting out life to spreading it. And this is the edge. Surges of ocean tides are already emerging through cracks in the ice sheet in a daily tussle for dominance. It's here, on the fringes of the continent, we stand to learn the most from the Katabatic's passing. At Cape Roberts, the sea ice is just 6 feet thick, just enough to support a drill platform for a major multinational research project. Beneath it lies the final collecting place for the material carried by the wind and ice, including potentially the ice continent's most important clues to our past. Drilling into the seabed here is bringing up samples which tell of major climatic events dating back to the very birth of the ice sheet. The cores are among the most eagerly awaited scientific samples of the modern age. They have already confirmed computerized models of climate patterns dating back 33 million years. But the cores also confirm that carbon dioxide levels, always closely linked to climate change, are now increasing 1,000 times faster than anything previously recorded. Team leader Peter Barrett is convinced our climate is set to heat beyond anything experienced since long before humans evolved. The world is headed for drastic climate changes, of a scale we hardly dare to contemplate. The ice continent is under direct threat, and with it the entire web of life as we know it. For now, there is little sign of the changes looming. Emperor penguins arrive to take advantage of the brief Antarctic summer. They are the first clue that the wind and ice are nearing the end of their sweep across the continent. Adelie penguins soon join them. Evolved to survive the cold sea where they feed, they are among the few who can defy the wrath of the katabatic. Here the katabatic finally reaches the sea, and it's only because of the sea that life can survive the wind's tyranny. Under the constant sun of the polar summer, the Antarctic Ocean becomes the most productive marine feeding ground on the planet. Its bounty is all that sustains life on this frigid domain. How will these creatures be affected by the changes ahead? The predictions are for more volatile weather patterns and greater extremes. Yet even now, life here has to be crammed into the most punishing schedule. The already short summer continually interrupted by the katabatic's icy intrusions. The penguins hasten their chicks towards independence, with another pulse of wind never far away. By the time the katabatic reaches the continent's edge, it has gathered the full momentum of its descent from the high polar dome. Even in midsummer, it brings a lethal blast of chill fury. For all the modern insulation and high technology of McMurdo Station, the advancing wind is greeted with the greatest respect. Signs of another pulse leaving the high plateau are not to be ignored.
For tomorrow, we have a system moving into the area. Look for the onset of snow beginning sometime after around 7 o'clock local tomorrow morning. Winds will be kicking in shortly after that.
The storm's first outriders begin to stir the coastal colonies. As the main front reaches the glaciers, fingers of high cloud marking out its leading edge. In this final 100-mile rush to the coast, the wind drops 10,000 feet vertically, building to raging gusts of 100 miles an hour. Storm front overtakes damp sea air, it gathers heavy low-lying cloud, and the gusts begin to pick up loose snow and granules of ice, sweeping them across the landscape. The Weddell seal pup has grown rapidly on a diet of its mother's fat-enriched milk in a race to beat the punishing conditions. Yet even those that have mastered this land best of all recognize a time to retreat. At 28 degrees, the water is preferable to facing the minus 60-degree chill of the Katabatic. The pup is just 7 weeks old, yet by necessity it is already close to independence. The storm around it is building into a fully fledged blizzard. In all the colonies of the coast, life draws to a standstill as the paramount ruler of the land asserts its unbridled power. A future more extreme than this seems too bleak to contemplate. The Katabatic surges into every corner of the frozen coast in a torrent of furious gusts. The coastal ice pack has been weakened by the summer's sun. Now the wind breaks it up, and with its last breath, drives it far out into the Southern Ocean. In time, the cooling effects of this blast will be felt in the farthest corner of the planet. But for now, the downward wind can fall no further. This is, however, just one more lull. And the breakup of the pack ice is the sign of summer's end. The narrow window of meager warmth that has drawn life here is about to close. And when the Katabatic comes in the long dark winter ahead, it will bring even greater fury. For at least 60 million years, the wind has been the dominant force shaping this great southern continent. Other forces may now be shaping a dramatic new chapter in its history. But whatever changes may come will be met and recorded by the constant stirrings of its restless guardian, the Katabatic wind.